show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, one episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Tough Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, and tonight we have some special guests with us. Most of them who you're going to recognize. Well, one's not a guest. One's my co-host, Phil Grimaldi, straight out of Brooklyn. Phil, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, Billy. How about you?
All right, pretty damn good. I'm wound up a little bit.
I see that.
Admit. But when we have these difficult legal cases or potentially difficult legal cases, we always invite Joe Murray. Sometimes he can incite the crowd, so we like that, though. We like that he can incite the crowd. And Joe Murray, welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Good to see both of you.
Joey.
This case at Astroworld and the Travis Scott concert, it's such a tragic thing, that now there's going to be a real long investigation in this. Not only were there 8 people dead, and potentially there could be 2 more, because I believe there's 2 more in the hospital that are brain dead. That usually means they're just waiting to pull the plug until the family gives permission. So that potentially could be 2 more. And there was over 300 people hurt. So many things went wrong with the security here. And when I'm hearing some of the numbers, apparently there were 500 Houston police officers there in the crowd somewhere. I don't know exactly what their role was in the security. There was an additional supposedly 700 security guards, of which some of them apparently had no training whatsoever, because some of them I've seen interviewed. They were like $17 an hour off the street. Hey, what are you doing tonight? You want to work a concert? $17 an hour. And that's not okay to hire people like that. At least in New York State now, they've learned their lesson, or have they? But all security guards are supposed to be licensed by the state, and they must take at least an 8 or 10 hour initial course, and they must take additional training. I don't know if any of these guys, well, I'm sure some of them, but a lot of them didn't have any training. And one of the things that I'm seeing from watching and listening to a lot of the news is that this was oversold. And whether you say they sold over 50,000 tickets or thousands of people snuck in, and we have proof of that. They took one of the gates and thousands came pouring through. So now you have an element that didn't pay for their tickets, and you have people that paid probably very high prices for tickets, and they're mixing up among the crowd. And I just want to make another comment about these pens they were in. All pens should have an egress and an exit, an entrance and an exit. And if you cannot get in easily and get out easily, that's a real security breach. There's a real problem there, because if you want to leave, you should be able to leave. These people were packed in so tightly that they couldn't leave if they wanted to. So, I mean, when you talk about, there's going to be huge investigations because there's 8 deaths and potentially 10 deaths. And you see everyone doing this now, pointing the finger at other people. Oh, it was the fire department's responsibility. And crowd control, at least in New York City, inside in clubs, that is the fire department's responsibility. Because if you overpack a club, they could call it a fire hazard. They could close the club. But this was outside. I don't know what the laws are in Houston, but the fire department in New York City is in charge of crowds. Now, as far as the way this was secured, the way this was manned, I think that maybe whoever was running this show, if I would have witnessed, and it's on tape, it's on social media, thousands of people crashing the gate, maybe that was the time to cancel this show. And that one of those breaches occurred at 9 o'clock in the morning. The show didn't occur till 9 o'clock at night. So this was stirring up. People are partying up. People are getting all ready for this show. And look, we're going to go into a lot of different things that happened. But, this was a recipe, I believe, for disaster. And the disaster happened. Do 50,000 person capacity concerts happen all the time across this country, across this world without an incident? Yes. But this one, guess what? Had an incident and 8 people are dead. So we can't look past that. Phil, an opening comments. I know you have some.
Well, yeah, I do have some opening comments. As you said, the fire department in New York City controls crowds inside establishments like restaurants, dance halls, or any place where people gather, like clubs, entertainment clubs. And most places have a posted number on the wall. When I mean by a number, it'll say maximum occupancy, and it has a number, 150, 200, whatever it may be. Now, in large venues, stadiums, open areas, there's probably different regulations, different guidelines that they go by. Now, the aerial view that you had up yesterday when we did the show, Billy, it showed this is just a wide open area. The pens look like they were way too big, if there even was pens. And like we talked about, that's a great photo. I mean, if you look at, it looks like there is sort of a rectangular figure from all the way to the left to like the middle of the screen. So that pen that's got to be, I don't know, I'm going to take a guess. 20,000 people. That's a lot of people in that small section. So, they're cramped in, and the way that the NYPD does it on New Year's Eve, Times Square, the pens are a lot smaller, they're more controlled, and they don't pack people in. They give people enough room to be comfortable, to move about, in a small area, obviously, but and then we went over it. Once they're in, they can't get back out. So I think that a lot of lessons are going to be learned from this horrible tragedy, that going forward, none of these promoters or entertainers should make the same mistakes. And I think that the model that the NYPD has put out over the many, many years of covering the ball drop in Times Square is probably one that all of these other venues should try to mirror.
But yet, Phil, that it's a different type of security. This is a rap concert. There's a certain energy at a rap concert that a different energy you have at New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So I can't, I understand. Yeah. The NYPD does some things very well, but I don't think we can compare New Year's Eve to this concert, especially when they had breaches of security with people. And there's a crowd expert, and I didn't know there was such a thing, but I guess TV stations find experts of every type. And I'm gonna put this gentleman.
Billy, if there was that type of a breach at New Year's Eve in Times Square, they would clear it. They wouldn't proceed. They proceeded with this after those. There were a couple of breaches actually. So yeah, I think that you're making great points about it. And let's hear what this crowd expert has to say.
Okay, I think I'm gonna put him on the screen, and we'll hear what he has to say.
One young man who attended the concert, he says there were barricades separating those who paid for a higher price ticket, but why wasn't that enough?
Because they allowed the section where the crowd crushing and crowd surges occur to become too dense. And there was apparently no crowd management. Nobody was looking after that crowd. That's why it's good that they separate the crowds from the closest to the front, but you then have to control the density and make sure you don't overcrowd that space, and that you manage the crowd and keep everyone safe and with the ability to leave whenever they want to.
Yeah, it didn't seem as though, even though, and again, this young man, 14 years old, he said there were security guards manning those barricades. Again, this is his witness testimony. We don't know exactly where every guard was placed, but we've been told that they had more security than at the World Series, maybe 500 security guards. But there didn't seem to be a clear path of escape should something go down. Do you think that this was one of the main problems?
This was one of the problems. And I just want to mention, just because you have a lot of guards doesn't make the place safe. Were they trained properly, and where were they located? Now, most guards in this situation stand behind a barricade, and they can help fans if they are within arm's reach. So anyone past that point is in trouble. And often the crowd crush at the front of the stage. We heard your segment here where security people acknowledge they've had this problem in the past, but yet they let that kind of environment continue. When people are getting crushed and have to be removed from the front of the barricade, that's a sign that you have a problem. Crowd experts know this. Crowd experts would call for the event to stop and for the crowd to become under control, reduce the density. So they were always playing with Russian roulette. This time, they didn't get away with it. And 8 people needlessly died, and hundreds have been injured.
Yes, it's true. And 50,000 people in attendance. In your mind, should events like this ever be so large?
They can be this large. They just have to be managed. You cannot have an unmanaged festival seating event. Festival seating, that standing room, is the most dangerous and deadly in live entertainment events. There have been similar events like this. We saw Woodstock 99, rapes and thousands of injuries in front of the stage. You might remember AC/DC at Salt Palace in 1991. 3 young kids crushed to death in front of the stage, 2 14-year-olds and a 19-year-old. Right. And then, of course, we all know the Who concert tragedy in Cincinnati, 11 deaths from 14 to 27, all but 4 were teenagers. The promoter, the fire marshal, the police officer, the city, the security, the artists all know or should know of the history of unmanaged festival seating crowds, and yet they ignored the history, the notice. They ignored their own warnings of concerts where kids have to be pulled over a barricade because they're getting crushed. They didn't take action. And of course, they ignored things like the National Fire Protection Association standard of care for festival seating events.
Well, we're so
Joe, comments.
Yeah, I got a funny story. We learned in the NYPD over time, because I remember, I think it was when I first got out of the academy in the late 80s, I was doing the Times Square detail, and you know how we have everything blocked off, but right near where the ball gets dropped, there was a crowd surge where people just filled in and the streets were packed. They were so packed that there was a guy who was very drunk, and he had a champagne bottle back when you could bring a bottle to that event. Now they don't let you, as far as I'm aware.
You're right,
But
Joe.
they let this guy in. He climbed up on top of, the walk, don't walk sign that you have on the corners. He climbed up on top, and he's dancing and dancing. He's drinking his champagne. And then he had to take a piss. And he whips it out, and he just soaks everyone. And that caused a crowd surge where everyone was dodging to get out of the way. We couldn't do anything. It was so densely packed. I am sure that was one of the incidents that furthered our techniques and strategy about crowd control, because I just felt bad for people because they were so jammed in. Here's this guy pissing on them. They can't move, and now they're fighting with each other to get out of the way, and it was a dangerous situation. So I'm looking at what happened here. We really don't know what the event was. Like in this case, it was the guy pissing on everyone, but we don't know what the event was that caused it. But it's a foreseeable event in a space of 50,000 people that something could happen. It doesn't even have to be, but it could be a gunshot. It could be anything that causes people to scatter, and then that surge, pressing up against other people. It could even be the entertainment itself, that somebody gets into it and he's doing something on stage that causes that. So it's absolutely foreseeable, and the people that are organizing this event have to plan for that and have these pressure valves, like this insulation with these safety routes. Yeah, like those parallel lines that you see in that picture, just to absorb that. Now, isn't it typical that the people in the front who paid the most, closest to the stage, they seem to be okay over here? You know, like there's
Well,
room.
Joe, I think what you're looking at, the stage is in the center. You're looking to the left of the stage.
Right.
This big mass. That's the front. That's the big mass. And there's a wall. Oh, there's a barrier here, and you can see some of the yellow shirts of the security guards.
Yes.
But these are the people I think that were in the most danger, because as you
But
could
it looks
see,
like there's space with the yellow shirts. It looks like there's
for them, the people in the crowd can't get there because there's a barrier. So
There's a channel there, and it just, if you look at the size, it's too wide. There's too many people in there. There needed to be a lot more channels in between all of these people. Obviously, in hindsight, that might have helped, but and you had the out of control behavior from early on. Billy, you played those videos from 2:00 in the afternoon yesterday's show. They showed people just storming the area, going through the metal detectors. So there was early warning signs, is my point. And Joe, I think you're saying it was foreseeable, 100%. And then you had Billy said there was some stuff happened early in the morning. Then 2:00 there was a surge of people that just ran through all the thousands of people just ran through the barriers. So now it's 2:00 in the afternoon. The show's not until 9. What'd they do about it? It doesn't look like they did anything.
It's so important. You make a great point, Philly. When they had that incident at 9:00 in the morning, 1,000 people rushed through. It's not so much that they're rushing through. I mean, you know, they're not paying and rushing through.
Joe,
So,
there it is on the screen. You can see this is thousands, and they knocked the fence down. So this is thousands of people that didn't have tickets. They're not being vetted. They're not being searched. So who knows what they have as far as things that they're not supposed to be bringing into the concert, i.e. drugs or alcohol.
Now,
so
when you
firearm?
see that, you have to prepare and say, wait a second, we lost it with 1,000 people already. So you got to bring the troops in. You got to make sure you thin that crowd. You have those barriers.
How about just canceling the venue? I mean, when Billy didn't show it on that last clip, but there was metal detectors set up that everybody was supposed to pass through, and they just stampeded it, went right around them, over them, through them, and that's 2:00 in the afternoon. So I think that they had to make a decision, and there's been several concerts canceled in the past. I have 5 or 6 of them written down, and based on fire marshal's regulations, that National Fire Protection Association standards, there's people that are in charge that will actually call an event and say, nope, it's too dangerous, you can't do it. And Billy brought up a point when we were on this yesterday, that a lot of times they'll cut corners when they realize that there's a lot of money to be made. They're cutting corners on security and different things, and they'll do anything to get the show off, because if the show actually starts, doesn't even have to finish, which with Ticketmaster and all of that, you don't get money back, So that's what their goal is. Their goal is to get the show off. If they get a half a show, they don't have to give money back. But if the show is canceled before they actually take the stage, then you're talking about refunds, and the almighty dollar comes into play.
Always comes down to the dollar.
One of the things also when we talk about Andy the Gabby Cabby's on the air.
There he is, the Gabby.
Thank you for the $5 super chat. Hello, you three. Hope you're well. We're doing very well, Andy. Welcome to the show.
Good man.
One of the things that they mentioned, and we talk about cutting corners that make things more dangerous in show business. We saw that on the set of Rust, where they hired an armorer, and she was wearing a second hat. Whether that contributed to the negligence or not, let the investigation play out. They hired an assistant producer that seemed like he was lax on his safety precautions. And the movie itself was they would cut rate. They were trying to use non-union labor. In this instance, you heard them say that they sold these tickets that experts said, we tell them, do not have that general admission type standing room only. It's the most dangerous type of setup for a concert, yet they don't listen because they make the most money selling those type of tickets. And, look, I'm too old to stand up for a concert. If I don't have a seat, I'm not going. You know what I mean? So I'm not standing like in a cow pasture waiting to hear, someone sing or whatever. But let's also underline the fact that this doesn't just happen at rap concerts. This happens at rock and roll concerts. In
Yeah.
1979, 11 people were killed in Cincinnati, Ohio, going into a Who concert. Same thing. It was general admission. And people got there early thinking they could get the better seats or standing room. And they tried to push through this narrow entry, and 11 people got crushed to death. So this has been a problem in rock and roll and rap, and it's a problem with huge crowds. But that the expert hit it on the head. The security for the World Series is not the same as the security for a concert. It's just apples and oranges. So let's make sure we underline that. I'm going to put another expert on the screen. He's talking about the social media and all the stuff they've heard on social media since this concert has happened.
We've been seeing since very early this morning and since this event started, and that's just one of utter and complete chaos. So as these posts describe, you have this massive crowd that's there. Everybody's waiting for this concert to start, for the main concert to start, the main artist, Travis Scott, to come out. And so as it got closer to time for Travis Scott to come out, everybody started going closer and closer and closer to that main stage. So you have a lot of people on social media describing that they couldn't get to the front, so they were kind of off to the side, and you had metal barriers there. One young lady described that metal barrier was at her chest. So you have all of these people encroaching on the stage, kind of inching closer and closer and packing in tighter and tighter and tighter. And you had a lot of this pent-up energy waiting for this concert to start. And so a lot of people described that once they got into that crowd, they turned around. They weren't leaving. Like I said, one young lady described it as where your feet were planted were where they stayed. You were not moving. A colleague of mine, his son was there, said his son was at the front. As they were close to the front, he turned around. There was no way to get out at that point. And so what happened, you could see it on social media. Had everybody with their phones out. When Travis Scott came out, I mean, it was an incredible entrance. The pyrotechnics went off. You had the display. The crowd, just a massive release of energy. And so everybody starts surging forward at that point. And that's when you start hearing from some people started getting trampled, some people started getting crushed, screaming for help, but it was just mass chaos. The video that we're showing now, that was from earlier in the day, where you had dozens of people that toppled a security fence because they wanted to bypass checkpoints. You had some aggression earlier in the day. There were several people detained from this particular incident, but you couldn't get everybody. I was also speaking with somebody else that when you have a massive crowd like that, it is very difficult to plan for every single contingency. And then when you have a crowd that tightly packed, it is very difficult to get either police officers or paramedics in there very quickly because you have this confusion. The people in the back don't know that people in the front are getting crushed.
The whole point of what he's talking about is that I don't know what that sound is I'm hearing.
Getting
the whole point of what he's talking about is that people shouldn't be packed that close together because that's inviting disaster. And maybe they should be put those, that open seating or open standing, maybe it should be broken up into 10 or 15 or 20 different pens rather than one, because now when people surge, the people in the front are going to get crushed. And that's the horror of this. But again, it has to do with dollars and cents. They make more money when they do that. And this is the horrors that, Joe, let's talk about a little bit of liability here. And now there are so many people liable here that, the artist is liable, right?
I think it's hard to say exactly who, because we don't know who the players are, but I would think that the security was an independent contractor who was hired to do it. I don't know if they were employees of the actual venue, but there's definitely some liability, plenty to go around here because this was entirely foreseeable. Clearly, the security was insufficient when you saw that video of the breakthrough of the gate. What really bothers me is, yes, they had set up metal detectors, but if 1,000 people went through without going through a metal detector and you still chose to continue with the concert, without rescreening these people, they're lucky that something horrible didn't happen as far as, with weapons. So yeah, this is it's ugly.
And apparently there was a lot of, as I said earlier, there was a lot of Houston police officers working security at this concert, off duty, the way the NYPD has off duty security for their officers. So again, that brings in another level of liability. The Houston Police Department, are the cops independent contractors, or are they working for the Houston Police Department? Then, of course, we have the fire department that usually in most cities runs crowd control. And they were consulted. I know I saw the fire chief on the air, and he was doing one of these too. He was pointing the fingers in different directions. One of the things that we were baffled at was that they were told up on the stage that this carnage was going on in the crowd, yet the concert wasn't stopped. And I heard some people say that they were concerned that if they stopped the concert, there would be like a mass riot. But you could stop it and explain to the crowd, look, we're going to come back on. We got to stop. There's some people that can't breathe out there. They're getting crushed. Please be cooperative. In that way, they had to do that. And they did. They kept the concert going for like 39 more minutes. And now more and more people were getting hurt, So it's, Phil, what do you think about that?
Well, Billy, the way I understand it from the little bit of research that I did, in these crush incidents, the people that are pushing one way towards the front are getting energy to get close to the stage. So they're pushing, they're trying to get close to the stage. And then the people that are getting pushed up at the front are now pushing back. So it's the people in the middle that really sustained. Now, when I say the middle, it could be 3 or 4 people deep back from the front, or 3 or 4 people in from the back end of it. All of those people are the ones that apparently sustained the injuries, the crush injuries. Now, you can clearly see that if you're in one of these crowds, you could probably only see a few feet, 10 feet in front of you that, what's going on. You're not able to see because you're so packed in how far. So I don't think the people who were pushing, now I'm not trying to give them an out or sympathize with them or take their side, but I don't think they realized what they were doing. Now, had somebody gone on that stage like Travis Smith or whatever his name is,
Travis Scott,
and said, it shows you how much I'm up on these rappers, but had he grabbed the microphone and said, all right, stop, guys, listen, we got a little situation. We're going to take a little break. There's some people that need a medical assistance, blah, blah, blah. Just everybody try and go back a little bit. We'll take the concert up in a few minutes. Something to that effect that may have prevented deaths and serious injuries. And another point I want to make real quick. You mentioned, Billy, we're going back to 1979 with the Who concert. That's over 40 years. And there's been incident after incident after incident, 11 dead, 2,400 dead in Saudi Arabia, 2015, and all these other cases, 100 dead. We got to get better at this. I mean, we've had thousands and hundreds of thousands of these events where nobody gets hurt like that, or there's always these minor EMS type, somebody faints, passes out from heat or whatever. But you're talking about thousands of people in those few incidents we just talked about since the 70s, and it doesn't seem like we're getting better at it. And I feel like we have the tools to make these things more safer and better, where these incidents aren't going to happen. And, apparently they weren't followed in this particular case.
Phil, you heard that crowd experts say that, yes, we can handle crowds this size, but you have to be proactive in these pens. And if they see they're getting overcrowded, they have to do something about it. They can't keep pouring people into those pens where people are like this, they're crushed. And, I'm going to show another little video of what it looked like from the crowd's point of view.
This video from a crowd member at Travis Scott's Astroworld Fest shows people stuffed together, terrified, screaming, some sensing what's next. Officials in Houston, Texas say at least 8 people have died. One person's age is unknown. Everyone else was under 30 years old, the youngest just 14, after a horrific stampede at the show Friday night while Travis Scott performed.
Because literally I was in that like initial group, like up close to the stage, and I literally was like this the whole time, and I couldn't move. So like as soon as he came out, the wave just like kind of crushed me in, and I was like this. I was being controlled by everybody, and I had to like keep my head up like this, like towards the sky, so I can breathe.
Rapper Roddy Ricch, who was also in the lineup, says he is donating his pay from the show to families of the victims. On Instagram over the weekend, Travis Scott posted this.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost last night. We're actually working right now to identify the families so we can help assist them through this tough time.
His girlfriend, Kylie Jenner, chiming in on social media as well. She says neither one of them knew anyone died until after the event was over. Travis Scott says he didn't know how bad things had gotten in the crowd. Many videos on social media appear to show Travis watching people carry someone away while continuing to hum. Houston's police chief reportedly told Travis Scott he was concerned about crowd control right before Friday's show. Travis Scott and concert promoter Live Nation both say they're cooperating with authorities, as they say it is now a criminal investigation. Officials say at least one security guard was pricked by someone who may have injected him with a drug. Concert goers have already filed at least 2 lawsuits against Travis Scott and Live Nation. Scott will reportedly pay out of pocket for the funerals of the deceased, and mental health services will be offered to anyone who attended that concert free of cost.
I think I need some mental health services just watching this thing. You know, I can't imagine being in that crowd. You see the guy had his hands up. He couldn't bring his hands back down. Like you can't, that's how packed in they are.
You know, I
And
was
the
going
one
to say
guy-
how dangerous it would be if somebody fell. I don't think you can fall.
You fall,
in
you
there.
fall, you're dead. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get trampled. You know,
not
You
enough
saw
room
in
to
that
fall.
little crush during the day, people were on the floor that got trampled. When Billy showed the first, I don't know if it was the first, but sometime during the day, I think it was around the 2:00 hour when they rushed the gate, and some people fell. And again, you have a few hundred people there that we see. Maybe I don't know how long that goes on for, but anywhere from a few hundred to thousands are in there. Now the 50,000 number is no longer 50,000. You know, how many got in by pushing in? 5, 10,000. You know, it's all super dangerous. These occupancy levels seem to be they were just ignored, and you know, there was definitely an overabundance of people there, and the crush started, and you know, you have the deaths. You know.
it's really scary to see. Like, could you imagine the mystery maven Joe Murray? Hi, what are your thoughts regarding arbitration clause versus limitation of liability? In my opinion, it's going to be tricky lawsuit against the promoter who sold tickets. Wow, this is a real technical question for Joe Murray, but we have the professor of.
I hate those arbitration clauses. I have a couple of cases where, you know, I dread them because it removes you from going to court. It removes your due process in court. You go before some, you know, retired judge who's now, you know, a mediator, and you argue a case there. It really just takes your right. I'll give you an example. Well, here's where I think they're going to have a problem. You will not be able to enforce an arbitration clause on a minor. Minors are incapable of entering into contracts. So by purchasing the ticket, I'm assuming Mr. Maeve is referring to, there's an arbitration clause. When you purchase this ticket, you can't file a lawsuit. But that doesn't apply to minors because they're incapable of consenting to a contract. So I think there will be a lot of people that will still file suits, but I can't stand them.
Well, Joe, how about even an artist egging on the crowd to rush the stage? Is that putting liability on the artist?
Sure, if that is the proximate cause of what led to somebody getting injured, absolutely. You know,
I think there's been he's had a history of this. Of he actually got arrested in Chicago, I think, for something like that, and he was charged with disorderly conduct. I just want to play this also. Let's
main entrance. And so for folks at home, you can take a look at kind of the layout of things, and Stan, you as well. This image shows the entrance, and that included wristband scanners, metal detectors. There were pat downs, bag checks, canines. There was snow fencing, and then those concrete bollards. It's basically those round things that you see outside of arenas made of concrete. So now I want to show you a clip, Stan, of the entrance gates and the crowd. This is some video of people once they basically opened things up, and this is fans pushing over those metal rails, those barricades that we talked about, and climbing over one another to get in after those security measures I laid out had already been put into place. So Stan, my question to you is, was all of this a precursor for what was to come later on Friday night?
Very definitely, this was a precursor. The entryway that you're showing has those pieces of equipment there to regulate the ingress of the crowd in an orderly fashion that leads to a ticket taking and what's called a drop count, where the ticket is torn into and the other half is dropped in a drop count, so that we can ensure that we get to the number of people that are authorized to be in the venue. This is reported to be 50,000. In looking at the crowd density, I'm going to agree with the fire chief, Chief Pena, who at 9:38 in the evening said, I'm going to shut it down. This density is far exceeding the 50,000. So my conclusion is that the people you see coming in this manner, they were free. They penetrated a soft entry point, got through. I suspect it probably was the VIP area that traditionally and historically has produced free entry for people that want to get in. That's one of the places I look at, and I've seen that type of thing occur over and over again. There were security officers there. My information has it. There weren't police officers there, which could have possibly slowed or stemmed the entry of free patrons.
Well, let me ask you before I move on to this next map of the inside of the venue. If something like that happens, it did. We saw it. There's video out there. I know that in the documents, this 56-page document, they are told the security on hand, do not engage the crowd, await instructions from event control. So after that first incident, should more have been done to make sure that a perimeter was set up, that they were prepared for a crowd that was qualified to surge?
Yes. I haven't read the document that you're referring to.
I just want to comment on that. And one of the things is, once you lose the crowd, it's too late to put in post incident security measures. And they lost the crowd. They lost it. This was one of the places they lost it. And you heard the experts refer to that area as a soft target. If it was known that that was the soft target, that was the soft spot that people by the thousands could take the gate. And I watched that same tape from that same area numerous times on different stations, and there was mounted cops there, but they lost it. They couldn't do anything. When you're outnumbered that much, once you lose it, you cannot get it back.
You know, just kind of in comparison, I hear what you're saying about losing the crowd, but we've had, especially, you know, when we were on the job, we had the Tompkins Square Park riots, the Crown Heights riots, the Washington Heights riots, and we had disorder control training. You can't take it on individually. It has to be a uniformed approach. And we would form a wedge, and we would do all that stuff, and we would be organized in the way that we addressed a crowd and divided it up and then dealt with it that way. But I heard they were hiring people off the street just to come and work security. You need that type of training. I mean, even these 500 officers, I don't know if they were, prepared to do this type of large scale disorder control where you're taking back now areas that you lost to the crowd. So, but I think it can be done. We've been trained in how to do it. I think it's something that should have been in place.
Diane B, thank you so much. New member joining the Police Off the Cuff YouTube family. Thank you so much. Welcome to our family. Folks, if you're not subscribed to Police Off the Cuff, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free to hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell and give us a thumbs up, all right? We also have a membership that I'm talking about for $2.99 a month. You're the bucket. For $6.99 a month, you can have coffee with Cannon. For $9.99 a month, you can polish my rack. For $24.99 a month, you're dipped in butter. And for the vaunted one member at $49.99 a month is heated dipped in butter. So if you want to join our family, those are the levels. So, when I watch this, and I appreciate everything you and Phil is saying, but we've all been at numerous, large crowd things, particularly Times Square. We've been to riots. We've been to all of that type of thing. But usually what can help stem riots, of course, is well-trained police officers that are allowed to take action. Because if the police officers are there, like the soldiers in March of the Wooden Soldiers, they're not going to do much. But one of the ways that you stop a crowd is you arrest people. You start arresting people, and then the rest of the crowd realizes, wow, they're serious. They're locking people up. But without a uniform presence there, which there wasn't, there was just guys wearing those yellow metallic vests saying security on them. They don't get the same respect. And when you saw those people just pouring through like that, there were people I saw getting crushed during that. So that is so dangerous, and there's such lawlessness. And with crowd security, where everyone's getting wanded, they're getting patted down for bringing alcohol or drugs in. That's so dangerous. And maybe at that point when that occurred, maybe they should have canceled the concert.
Bill,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joey. Go.
I have to say, though, I went to Houston, and we were at the Toyota Center for the UFC. I went there to watch Mike Chiesa fight. And I got to hand it to these Houston police officers. They were in control. Because don't forget, the mass rush to get in and then to get out, there's so many people on the street. They were so organized, and they really, I felt safe, throughout. When we left there, we walked, and what was the name of that steakhouse you went to? That was fantastic. No, over in Houston. Anyway, I got to hand,
Who is that lady off the screen? Who is that phantom that's not on? She's not in the show, but she's off the set. Who is that? Is that is that your partner in your new show, Angie?
Listen, allegedly guilty is it's really happening. She's doing it for my birthday. That was just so wonderful of her. My birthday is Saturday, November 13th, and she's
Happy
like,
birthday.
"I'm gonna do this for you, put this thing together." So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I gotta say, Houston really did, a job, because that Toyota Center was massive, and the people were just pouring out of there, and then the music started. And
Joe, how about the fire chief? I mean, that last tape that Billy played, the fire chief decides at 9:38 he's shutting it down. And again, if everybody's got their eye on Travis Scott, all he had to do was make an announcement early on, and it could have maybe saved some lives. I mean, I don't know, but I would think he didn't. At one point, he did say, all right, we need medical attention over here. Somebody fainted. He did do that at one point, but somebody needed to take control of that whole situation, that whole concert. And, you don't say you're going to shut it down, because then, again, we talked about maybe there's going to be riots breaking out, that they're shutting it down early. But we got a little situation, you calm everybody, and, you try to restore some order and get help to those people. But again, the fire marshal at 9:38 decides to shut it down. I think it was a little too late at that point.
I think
it was exactly what you said, though. They were worried what's going to happen if they shut it down. Is it going to be a riot? Is it going to be, something? So it's kind of a cost benefit. They're weighing, geez, we have a couple of casualties here, but if we shut it down, we can have 10 times that. So I think that was probably something that came into the,
I'm sure.
Let me play a little bit of this.
During the day on Friday, as it was clear that the crowd there was getting, was rowdy, and but earlier in the day. So not when the sort of stampedes were occurring, but went there and sort of reminded Travis Scott that back in 2019, he'd also had an issue at his concert and there'd been some stampeding and some people injured. And sort of just, as a kind of mentor, went to talk to the younger man and say, just this is kind of the kinds of fans you have. They're very devoted, and just to be aware of that.
Is there a sense of what kind of impact that had? And I wonder, because noted in the report, your report, is that yes, Chief Finner knows Travis Scott, but that he also likes him, right? He sees him as this hometown boy who's there doing something that's really good for the community, for the economy. Is it possible that this was a warning that was sort of just more jovial?
Well, I don't think we know exactly how it was conveyed or how it was received at this point, but I do know that officials here have talked, to me at least, a lot about how what Travis Scott was trying to do with Astroworld and what he was doing earlier in the week. He had been at an elementary school to open up a community garden that he had supported, and his foundation does do some work in Houston. So I think there's a lot of the devastation is felt particularly close, even amongst top officials in Houston, because of this. And the victims too. People came from all over to go to this concert, but they also came from right here in Houston. And in fact, one of the youngest victims, a 16-year-old, went to the high school down the street from my place in Houston. And so it really is something that's felt by the community at large. And I think there was this sort of sense that Travis Scott was trying to do good, and I think there was some defensiveness of him, and we'll see how that plays out in the investigation.
Yeah, look, it's so upsetting with these young folks who have died in this and been injured. David, thank you for the great reporting.
Thanks so much.
All right, I want to bring in Noah Shackman, editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone. I really appreciate you coming in and talking about this. Travis Scott concerts. What's the history here?
The history is a pretty violent one. Back in 2017 here in New York, Travis Scott begged a fan to jump off a second-story balcony. That fan was luckily okay, but another fan says that he was pushed off and was ultimately paralyzed at that show. And despite that, Travis Scott talked to lyrics about how he needs to see injuries in the mosh pit. There's been other incidents in later years in 2019.
Whole new spin.
And, the warning signs on this one go way, way back, unfortunately.
One of the things apparently he said from the stage this time is, he wanted to see the ground shake with the crowd there. I guess it depends on what he meant by that, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, things like that, I want to see the ground shake, all that, that's all fine as far as I'm concerned. But what did happen was, as a previous guest noted, is the show was stopped 3 times. And it wasn't stopped and then stopped permanently. It was stopped and then resumed. And that's a problem because after the very first song, fans were chanting, stop the show, and the show didn't stop. It went on for another, 35 minutes or so.
What's not clear, at least not yet, is how much Travis Scott knew from the stage about exactly what was happening.
Yeah, correct. He didn't know. But again, there were warning signs, not just on Travis Scott's behalf, but look, just a month earlier at that exact same place in Houston, Energy Field, a rapper named Playboi Carti was scheduled to perform. There were early warning signs at that show that it was not going to be safe, and the show was canceled at the last minute. At this show, there were early warning signs way, way, way before Scott played, early in the day, that fans were rushing certain areas or were rushing in without tickets, and that there was going to be an unsafe environment. An AP photographer texted management to say, hey, this wasn't, something's not right here, something's unsafe, and yet the show went on.
And whatever he knew.
Scary, right? Scary.
Very,
all those.
very. And then you have that element that they're talking about, that he goaded somebody to jump off a second-story balcony, and another person got pushed and was paralyzed. So now you're talking about a track record of safety issues, and him egging people to jump from a second-floor balcony. I mean, I know that I doubt very, very highly that he knew what was going on and continued on. And I don't think he wanted any of this, but there's a certain responsibility that you have as a performer and an entertainer to keep people safe. And, it doesn't sound like, based on what that last video that Billy just put up, the show was stopped 2 or 3 times and it went on. And I don't think there was any announcements about, pushback or people are being crushed or there's people that need help. There was a lot of things could have been done. They didn't do any of them. So I think there's going to be some heavy liability to go around for plenty here.
Yeah.
Pip Arrow from the UK, Brian Enton, has just tweeted that he just interviewed the fire chief. Very interesting to read. You know, the fire chief apparently wanted to shut it down, and I don't know if he was talked out of it. And that was, I think they said at 9:39 or whatever the time was, he wanted to shut the concert down. They were afraid that if he did, there would have been a stampede, maybe mass riots. So, you know, all of these things have to be taken into consideration. And the biggest thing that all these security experts said was there was not enough personal space for each concert goer. They were crushed up against each other, and that's not okay, obviously.
Yeah.
You know what it sounds like, Billy? It sounds like they sold 50,000 tickets, and maybe that arena was comfortably hold 50,000 with the way they had it set up. But it sounds like many, many more showed up. It is, you know, they go on social media. They say, yeah, you know, go to this location, go to that location, with or without tickets, and you have this horrible tragedy that occurs. I'm telling you, it's going to wind up being, there was way more than 50,000 people there, and the push to get in, and people in the back, when the fireworks start going off, they all want to see it. They start pushing. Next thing you know, you have the domino effect, and people are getting crushed to death.
You know, with all these crowd experts, I was hoping to hear like what a comfortable ratio should be at a concert like this. They said it estimated like 50,000 people, and they had 1,000 combination of police and security. So that's one police officer or security officer for 50 people in a tight venue like this. I don't know. I don't know what the reasonable standard of care is for that. Should you have had a higher ratio or lower? But you know, the decision to shut this down is a little troubling to me without having the proper, you know, numbers, people to support that and enforce that safely, because as we discussed, it could have erupted into like a riot. So I don't know what the planning was on that. Even the fire commissioner delaying it so long, maybe they were trying to get more resources to the arena so that they could safely, you know, escort people out and end the concert. I don't know, but I really think there's a big problem here. This should not happen. We shouldn't worry about our kids going to a concert and then getting crushed to death.
You know, Joe, and apparently there was a 54-page document obtained by, I think, CNN. Of course, they're going to read that document, that defined how they were going to work the security for this show. So it's probably a document that is used over and over and over again. Maybe some of it was customized for this particular venue, this particular crowd. But, you know, you can't account for the unforeseen. However, you must react it. You must react to it. And they didn't react very well at all. When people started getting crushed, there should have been some official that could contact the stage, that had the authority to tell whoever the most powerful person was on that stage, we need to shut this down right now. You know, stop the concert, and maybe stop it and restart it, or maybe stop it and end it right there. But there was none of that. That wasn't available.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in it. And like you said, the fire department has the ultimate say, but they don't have the numbers to enforce something like that. So I really put this on the police commissioner. If I'm the police commissioner of my city and I have a major event, I don't care if it's, you know, the with the campaigns, how they have their party, you know, I forget, I'm losing my mind. But I don't care what the event is, whether it's a rap concert, a rock concert, a country music, whatever the event. You have a large scale event. It could be a demonstration, the Million Man March. It's got to be the law enforcement professionals that oversee this. And you have to have contingency plans. That's what we do with OMAP and all the emergency operations we have. In the event that something terrible happens, look what happened in Las Vegas, out in Nevada, when they had that concert and there was a guy picking people off. You know, you have to have contingency plans for emergencies. And the failure to do so, I think, rests with the police department. Although I got to tip my hat to them. I was there in Houston and saw how proficient they were at handling numbers and crowd control. And I'm just, actually surprised by this, to see that something
But
like
Joe,
this would happen.
the event you were at, were there uniform cops there?
Yes, and
See,
they were cops, like they were command cops, like being authoritative and making sure, being courteous, but you knew they were cops.
But you didn't see, other than those two mounted officers I saw at the gate where the people stormed the gate. I didn't see any uniformed Houston officers there. They may have been in the crowd in plain clothes, but that's not going to help when a crowd gets out of control.
Well, is that the paid detail, and are they working in uniform? That's a good question. Just because they're police officers, they may have been, in plain clothes.
Don't forget too, in 2021, the use of horses is frowned upon in many states, many police agencies. They they don't like to utilize the horses, and I've saw the NYPD mounted unit utilized. I mean, there was a rap concert going on in Coney Island one time, and there had to be about 5,000 people in a block. There was the boardwalk to Surf Avenue, and it was the block of the Cyclone, maybe 25, 30 feet wide. And there was a bunch of chain snatches, and the four horses, two on each side, went down the block. They went to the end, and they did the sideways prance, and they cleared the block in maybe a minute or two. They cleared about 5,000 people based on the duty captain's order that it became unsafe. There were too many people being robbed. Who was getting beat up? Clear it out, and those four horses cleared, I'd say, a good 5,000 people in like a minute or two. So if they're utilized properly and there's enough properly, and if there's enough of them, I mean, Billy stated that we only saw two horses in that crowd. I don't know how many were there, but mounted unit could be a great asset in crowd control. They go through extensive training, and those horses are nothing to be played with. A lot of people. They take it real serious, when you got that 1,500-pound horse coming at you.
Phil, I love this comment by Tweety US News. Horses equals bad idea because horses hate it. I love that comment. Yes, we're gonna ask the horses. Would you guys mind working tonight? Oh, you don't want to work? You hate working concerts? Okay, we won't use you. I love that.
But it's so true, Philly. I mean, those horses are massive. And when you see it as for what it is, it's an animal, it's unpredictable. So I think it just, people react to them differently than they do a human being. And then if you remember, like the Tompkins Square Park riot, they brought that helicopter down right at the tree level. So, I mean, people scattered when that thing came in.
Joe, have you ever seen the mounted unit of the NYPD do what I said, where they go into the horses go sideways, and they do like a sideways, I think they call it prancing, where the horses prance, and they did it in other words, there were two horses, but it was like it was like two horses, right next to one another,
side by side. Yeah. I used to do that when I scored a touchdown.
But then they also just circle sometimes, and that just
there's a lot of different maneuvers that they do. And when I worked in the 70 precinct, we had a commanding officer, Deputy Inspector Melnick, and he was head of the mounted unit before he came to us. So we had horses. There were stables in Prospect Park, and he took us out riding when I was in anti-crime, and he showed us a few different things. And there's so many maneuvers that those horses can do, and related to crowd control, and they're such a great asset. But in 2021, with all the stuff that's going on, they don't want cops to have helmets at riots. They don't want them to have nightsticks, or we call it hats and bats. They don't want them to have that. They wait until a cop gets hit over the head with a brick or a bottle before they bring in the reinforcements that have it. And everything is really topsy-turvy, and maybe that's the reason there wasn't many mounted police officers at this venue, because they're worried about being politically correct and such. I don't know that to be fact, but I got to tell you, I think that those four horses did what probably a couple of dozen cops couldn't do, or maybe 50 cops. Those four horses were equivalent to clear out that block like in a minute or two, and the concert was over. Whatever was going on was over.
It's so true. I mean, all summer long we had these Black Lives Matter riots going on. Not one horse. Not one horse was introduced. ESU, nothing. None of the support services, highway, nobody was brought in. It was just horrible. But I
And
think
how many
they're
cops were injured?
sacrificing public safety for political correctness.
Yeah. And many, many injuries. I know a good friend of mine, a captain, who during those riots last summer, not the summer that just passed, the summer previous, 2020, he sustained a disabilitating injury. He's waiting to get 3/4. He's going off the job on a disability, and he was right in the thick of thing. A white shirt, captain in one of these riots, and he wound up at the bottom of the pile of one of these melees. And he blew out his knee and his shoulder. But and there's been many of those. I mean, they were in the newspaper. They were all over television when that was going on. So obviously, crowd control is there's techniques that could be utilized. There's different manpower, and then there's different resources. Like we mentioned the horses, and it looks like not much was really utilized in this situation.
Yeah.
Guys, we're at the hour point, and I thought we'd just do about an hour tonight on this. This is the second time we've covered this, and I just want to say one thing. I really feel for the parents that lost the 8 people that died, and apparently there's 2 others in a hospital. One I know that's brain dead at this point. The other may also be. So that potentially the death toll could rise to 10 from 8, which is just so horrible. My heart goes out to those families. And I just hope in the future we learn our lessons about these things and we properly secure these venues. Joe, last words?
Yeah, amen, Bill. I mean, that's just so tragic. We all have kids, and to think, that what a way to lose your kid, going to a concert and getting crushed to death. I mean, that's
horrible.
I echo what you said. I mean, my heart goes out to them. What tragedy that must be. To wait a minute, he was at a concert. So yeah, thank you.
Billy, last words?
Last words, sympathy and condolences and prayers to the dead and injured in this horrible situation. Let's hope that we can learn from this horrible mistake and all the previous ones that we noted, and that we could utilize better strategy and control and security for safety at these large events. I think that all the tools are right there at our fingertips. They just got to be implemented and utilized. And on a last note, Joe, I know your birthday's Saturday. Happy birthday ahead of time. I hope you have a great birthday and lots of luck on Allegedly Guilty. I think it's going to be a great podcast. We've had the honor to have you on the show many times, and your expertise in criminal law, shines right through. And I think this podcast is going to be a great thing, and I'm sure it's going to be popular. Good luck to you and to your sidekick Angie as well, who's right there with you. God bless.
Thanks so much, Philly. Listen, you guys were the birth of this thing. Because I felt like I was always reminding you, allegedly guilty, allegedly, he hasn't been charged yet. So thanks so much.
That's funny. So, folks, on behalf of Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, I'm your host, Bill Cannon, and my co-host, Phil Grimaldi, and our special guest, Joe Murray. Have a great night and a safe evening, and great to have you guys here.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.